One of our big values at Wealth and Plan is treat others the way that we would treat our parents. Welcome to Wealth in Progress, the weekly podcast for professionals in their 30s and 40s trying to build wealth while juggling careers, family, rising expenses, and the occasional panic after scrolling social media for 5 minutes. I'm PJ, founder of Wealth and Plan, a virtual financial planning practice serving clients nationwide. If you want to learn more or start a conversation, head over to wealthandplan.com. We are currently accepting new clients and would love to get to know you. Here is this week's episode. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 6 of Wealth in Progress. I'm PJ, founder of Wealth and Plan. I work specifically with young professionals in their 30s and 40s. And in today's episode, I actually wanted to kind of get a little down to earth and talk about who I am as an individual, who we are as a company, why I started Wealth and Plan, and really just introduce myself to you if you're watching and tell you more about myself. One of the things that I really believe in is just that human to human interaction. Something that I've noticed just in my experience of being in financial planning for so long, there sometimes is a lack of a personal relationship when it comes to working with a financial advisor. A lot of the times, unfortunately, those interactions are very transactional, and financial advisors just want you as a client just so they can make a sale, maybe earn a commission, or, they don't really sometimes put in the time and effort. And I'm not saying this is everybody. This is just an overall observation of some people out there. They don't put the time and effort into really getting to know you as a person. So that is ultimately one of the reasons what led me into this decision. But let me backtrack even more than that. So my first name is actually Pews, pronounced like church pews. I do go by PJ just because it's a little bit easier to pronounce. I was born in Lithuania, which is a small little country in Eastern Europe. It's north of Poland, if you're familiar where Poland is at. And I moved to the States in 2008. My mom and I, we moved here, and I grew up in New Braunfels, Texas, which is a small little town right outside of Austin, kind of in between Austin and San Antonio. Went to middle school, high school there, and ended up going to the University of Houston, go Cougs, to study finance. And ultimately, while I was there, I went down the financial planning route, which really just helped me kind of get introduced to financial planning and various different topics like retirement planning, estate planning, risk management solutions, all of that I was able to learn at university. The reason why I wanted to become a financial planner, and I have this on my website if you visited, but when I was in high school, I actually took a general finance course in high school, and I really started to learn and appreciate the different vehicles, savings vehicles that are available out there for people. And when I turned 18, I was like, man, I have to do something, right? I felt the need. I was like, if I can get started earlier, I keep hearing this advice that if you start earlier, the better. I actually went out and I opened a Roth IRA by myself. This is not something that my parents introduced to me. They've always made it feel like we didn't struggle with money. I knew that we never had, all this money in the world, but we were comfortable. But they weren't overly familiar with various different terms when it comes to investing and savings vehicles. They weren't really educated in that world, unfortunately. And I thought, well, if I can get a head start, then, not only will hopefully I set myself up for success, but also them as well. Got to a point where kind of kept learning, kept reading various articles, various books about it. And I told my parents, I said, hey guys, why don't you try talking to a financial advisor? I think, everybody could benefit from it. And if you've never done it, what's the worst that can happen? So my parents did end up making an appointment with an advisor over in New Braunfels, and they walked in the office, had a very open-hearted conversation, just like I would expect every person to have with their financial advisor and vice versa. And ultimately, the advisor very gently turned them down because they had an asset minimum I don't remember the exact number, maybe 250,000, maybe 500,000 of assets that you needed to have in order for them to essentially work with you and give you the advice that they were giving. And knowing what I know now, it's very common for advisors to do that, to where they say, hey, you have to have an X number of assets for us to work with you, because as with everything, right, there's value when it comes to time. And whenever you're an advisor that is working with a high volume of clients, you are trying to manage your time in the most efficient way possible. But in that specific instance, I felt really bad for my parents because I saw their reaction of not feeling like they had enough. And it, as a kid, as a, 18-year-old child, teenager still, I had this feeling of sort of that's not fair, right? Like, how come this advice is reserved specifically for people with lots of assets already to their name? What do people that don't have this much money do? What are they supposed to do? And mind you, this is at this date and time, I mean, I think it was 2012, 2013, something like that. So obviously, the internet was around and all that stuff, and there was resources online and everything. But if you're an older person and you weren't familiar with everything that was out on the internet just yet, you weren't trusting those sources just yet. And, things like robo advisors weren't really a thing yet, as far as I know. And again, I didn't do my research so back then, so I don't know what the availability of that was. I just know that if my parents weren't familiar with it, then I'm sure that a whole bunch of other people out there weren't familiar with, how do I learn? How do I get started? What's the right move? Where do I go? And in this specific instance, they went to a small town financial advisor hoping to get some help, hoping to guide them in the right direction. And essentially they were turned away because they hadn't saved enough. So it sort of felt a little bit like a failure. I took that as motivation for me. Of course, just like with all of us, I'm sure we want our parents to be well off. And I said, I'm just going to go out there. I'm going to learn all of this stuff out there about financial planning, and I will help you guys. And not just you guys, I hope to help other people that might be in your situation and hopefully guide them in that right direction. So fast forward 10 years or so, I'm in a position today where I created Wealth and Plan back at the start of 2026. I spent 10 years in the industry, had a couple different stops. Right out of college, I worked at Merrill Lynch for a little bit, kind of got exposure to the big name broker dealer. After that, went to JP Morgan, again, very big name. Everybody's heard of JP Morgan Chase. Spent about 2.5, 3 years there. And then I spent another 5 years at just more of a smaller independent firm, kind of like what I do now, but got exposure there and got to a point where I thought, you know what? I think I've done this long enough. I think I can go off on my own and really provide the advice that I think is the most important to people and emphasize the relationship, the one-to-one relationship with the people that I love serving, which are my clients and future clients, and started Wealth and Plan. And the whole premise of Wealth and Plan, and we will carry this on for as long as it takes, is that we do not have an asset minimum for you to work with us, right? If you are at a position in your life where you might have debt, whether it's consumer debt or any other debt, and you need help getting out of that debt, we will be here for you. We will be available to have those conversations with you. We are not going to turn you down. At the same time, at my previous experience, I did have exposure working with high net worth and ultra high net worth families. And I do find that as much as I want to help the people that might not have had access to a financial advisor before, most people that do seek out a financial advisor are people with assets. And so, of course, we do serve those clients. I've been running my firm now for about 4 months as of the date of this recording. The average income of my client is about $300,000 a year, which is a high earning individual. Average asset level is in the $250,000 range of assets that people have invested and that we're managing. So by all means, we are not just for the individual that is trying to figure it out. We are also here for individuals that have maybe more of those complex needs. But more than anything, what I'm trying to say and do is just be a resource out there for those people that might need somebody but feel like they don't have enough. Given how I got into the industry, one of our big values at Wealth and Plan is treat others the way that we would treat our parents. Obviously, with the story about my parents being turned away by a financial advisor. So, if we ever get to a point where you'd like to have an intro conversation, we are going to talk about your situation, see if we're a good fit. Sometimes we are not, and that's okay. We might have a conversation, and maybe you're looking for someone that is an expert at something that we're not as good at. Maybe we will have a conversation, and you're looking for someone local, and we are a virtual practice, and you would like to meet somebody face to face. That's also fine. The first conversation is always very laid back. It's just for you to get to know me as a person. It's for me to get to know you as a person. And the advice that you will receive from our firm is always the advice that we would give to our parents if they were in the exact same situation as you were. Of course, everyone's situation is a little different, so there are variables that do change, but overall, we will treat you just like we would our parents. And to kind of wrap this all up, Wealth and Plan is accepting new clients. We actually do plan on sort of capping out how many relationships that we have to 75 households. We're not there yet, but that is our goal. Whenever we get to that 75 household number, we will sort of evaluate and see where the firm goes from there. Of course, as I mentioned earlier in this video, that I do want to be available for individuals that might feel like they need somebody but don't have enough to talk to a financial advisor. So we will always be there for those people. But in terms of the number of households that we serve overall, we do plan on 75. And if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I've got all my contact information on our website, wealthandplan.com. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel just so that more people can get access to our educational videos and hopefully learn from them and use them as a resource. We will also post this podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The highlights are always available on Instagram and LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with us on those platforms. As always, all of our videos are for educational purposes only. They are not investment advice. Everyone's situation is a little different, so talk to a financial professional before you make any decisions. And other than that, thank you guys for listening. I know this week's episode was more of a personal one rather than an educational one. But if you do have any feedback on topics that you would like to hear about, or just any other advice on the format of these videos, if you like them shorter, longer, maybe more technical, as I've been kind of keeping them a little bit high level for the sake of these conversations, feel free to reach out. I would love to hear that feedback from you guys. And other than that, thank you very much for listening and hope I see you here next week. Bye-bye. Take care.